too before we start. You can F and blind and everything like that as well, so there's no hassle there.
What's that, buddy? Sorry.
Just saying there as well, you can F and blind as well throughout this, so there's no hassle there as well.
Oh, no, I'd have done it anyway, don't worry about it. I made you guys you guys could have blinked me if you needed to.
I cursed the most here, so like we couldn't make sure there was a PG podcast. It was next to impossible.
Listen, they made us speak this language, so we'll speak it whatever way we want to speak it.
Exactly. Do you know how hard it is to be at work and be like, and have someone come up to me and say something stupid and me not go, "Are you a fucking idiot?" No.
Because rightly they are, so that's the key.
Yeah. But I'm going to intro it, and then we'll take it all off from there. But again, thank you for coming.
No worries. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the 5Marks Pro Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Martin115, joined by my lovely dance partner, as always.
How are you doing, everybody? My name's Camo. Thanks for coming back for another week.
It's another week, and now we're just, at the time of recording this, it's just before Scrapper, but we're just hot off Scrapper Mania. I'm hoping that God was a great event. I've no doubt about it. But this week, we are joined by a man who I can guarantee you, this is me talking in the past, has tore down the house with Eddie fucking Kingston. He is a former ICW champion, a former NXT Tag Team champion, Progress Wrestling champion, and the inaugural WCPW World Champion. He is the Beast from Belfast, Big fucking Damo.
What about you, lads? Where's the other three of you? I thought there's going to be 5 fucking marks here.
I don't count those other three anymore.
One of them is off at work. 2 of them are up seeing Saxton and Dublin at the moment. So
Disgusting. I was genuinely, I was almost panicking about thinking, how the fuck I'm going to answer 5 fucking people.
We were the exact same when we started this. We're like, lads, how we do interviews? We'll just do 2 of us or what? Because there'll be 5 of us asking questions. Let's keep it to 2 for interviews. But Dave, how are you doing?
Fantastic. But I'm actually in Glasgow right now. This is where my wife's family, where she's originally grew up. So we're spending a week here, which has been really cool. And it's a great opportunity to get back and see our family, the nephews, niece, all these kind of things. So having a very good time. I literally just got off a crazy weekend there. Friday, I was in Cardiff with Rev Pro against the wonderful Will Ospreay. Saturday, I was in Dublin with OTT against Renzo Rose, and he's a piece of shit, but he was fantastic in ring. And then Sunday, I was against Ricky Knight Jr. for Progress in London. And he's an outstanding talent. So I had a hell of a weekend. I'm in 3 of the bigger promotions, and just having a great time. So yeah, it's one of the best parts of my life right now. Is like I get to go to all these great companies, these fantastic young talents, and it's almost keeping me like Peter Pan, keeping me young here, getting to wrestle these lads, all this energy they have, and the passion that they have, and I'm getting to enjoy myself. And one of the best parts about getting to OTT is getting to talk to everybody about bloody football, because I spent 7 years in America and nobody fucking talks to me about it. So
it seems like, though, now it gets talked about all the time. Like, I see the lads playing football and everything before shows. Now it's being talked about over there, and you're just sitting at home, you're sitting away from it, going, "You bastards, where the fuck were you when I was there?"
I mean, you get the occasional one, right? And then when the World Cup was on 2018, so I'm up in SmackDown at that point, and everybody's like kind of starting to get excited for it. So we're all playing keepy-ups and all before shows. Like, so we're doing our warm-ups like for about an hour playing keepy-ups. Like Usos, Rusev, Sheamus, all the lads will be into it, right? And then as soon as the World Cup ends, suddenly we start playing fucking football again, So.
Look, I'm actually going to start talking about that. Football itself. You're a Manchester United fan, is that correct?
I'm indeed. Yes, sir.
How do you think the season's gone so far? Obviously, Marcus Rashford is scoring on all fronts. Like,
so far, so good. Like, honestly, we're ahead of where we really wanted to be. We wanted to be, fighting for top 4. Really, that was our number one goal. If we could be, doing well in a cup tournament, we'd be delighted. Now, we just won the League Cup, so I feel like we're kind of a step above where we wanted to be. And now we're in a position we've put goals past Arsenal, City, we beat Liverpool, so we beat all the top teams so far this year. So you're thinking, listen, why can't next year, the year after, we'd be like right up there fighting for the title? Yes, we're still missing 1 or 2 players in key positions and stuff like that, but this manager seems to be getting a hell of a lot out of some of these players. Fred has scored 6 goals. My mind's kind of blown. there was last year, like genuinely, he would get a nosebleed if he was getting the ball past the centre circle. You know what I mean? And Rashford, like, listen, we always knew Rashford had the talent. He just didn't have the consistency. He obviously had a lot of injuries. He had a double back fracture. He had a problem with his ankle, problem with his shoulder. So he was been battling through these injuries. And like last season, only scored 5 goals or whatever. Like it was awkward. It just wasn't working for him. Under this manager, he's got all this freedom now, and you've got the fact that you do have a midfield of Casemiro and Eriksen, who sadly just been injured, but it just freed up Bruno to be able to be the creative force that we've needed, and then having Eriksen as well, right in the middle, being able to make it 9 assists or something so far this season. So it's like suddenly the team has a better balance. The manager looked at the team and went, "Oh, we need a right winger." They haven't had one since when did Antonio Valencia become a right back? 10 years ago. Yeah. So we haven't actually had an out-and-out right winger in 10 years. So the manager was like, listen, I'm going to bring this lad in from Ajax, overpay, that's fine. But suddenly we've got a balance. So we used to get double teamed on the left-hand side of the park, and now people don't know what to do. You know what I mean? So we're actually very difficult to defend against. But the proof will be this weekend. Liverpool will be a really tough test because they need a result. And if we can get something decent there, then listen, you never know what can happen for the rest of the year. But so far, very delighted with how it's working out. Delighted with what the future's going to look like under Erik ten Hag.
Absolutely. I just will say that I'm a Liverpool fan and I am not looking forward to Sunday at all. I don't feel it's going to go well for us, but look, we'll wait and see on that. I suppose we'll cut back into wrestling. So where did you actually, I suppose actually we'll start with what we always start with. What's your first wrestling memory?
First wrestling memories, that's a great question. So when I was about 3 or 4, my best friend in Belfast there, Chris Goodfella, he showed me WCW. He used to be on ITV there in Northern Ireland, or UTV, so it was Ulster Television. And every Saturday afternoon you would get the wrestling on. So he taped an episode, and that was it. That's all I remember really. And from there I was hooked. It was Power Rangers and it'd be the wrestling and whatever else, you know what I mean? Maybe the Power Rangers came later, actually. But I remember it was 1988, 1989. I think it's 88 was when I first saw it. So I'd have been 3 years old or whatever. And like Sting was this face painted giant dude with blonde spiky hair, and I was like, oh my god, this guy's amazing. And that's it. That was my first real memory of it. You know what I mean? And later on, you start to realize, like, there's good guys, there's bad guys. I started to hate Vader, for example. He was the top villain at the time, which is funny because I'm a lot more like Vader than I am Sting. But and then as wrestling came off the TV, but I managed to see WCW in Belfast in 1993, so I got to see like British Bulldog and Sting were the 2 major babyfaces on the show, which is really cool. But the card itself had like Nash and Mankind and under different gimmicks, obviously. So Mick Foley, Mankind, and I think Steve Austin was on it as well. But all under different gimmicks and whatever. But like when I really look back on that card, it's absolutely nuts. But Van Hammer was still on. Thankfully, Van Hammer was still there, which is important for But yeah, so that was my early foray into wrestling. I kind of then fell out of it because it was off the television. I didn't have Sky, so I'd be getting like the occasional tapes. And for anybody who's too young to know this, we used to have this incredible invention that went next to your television, where you had to put a physical thing into it, and it showed you what you wanted to watch. And it was called a VHS, and you would get them from shops. And we used to get the tapes and stuff like that every couple of weeks or every month or whatever. So I think I watched Royal Rumble 91 about 6 million times because I just love the Royal Rumble. And then eventually we got Sky Television in the late 90s, so 97 I think we got it. And that's it. That was me hooked properly, for the rest of my life really, because you were getting WWF, WCW, and ECW. And the funniest part was I found them all accidentally. I didn't randomly think, oh yeah, the wrestling. I turned over and I think the New Age Outlaws threw Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack off the stage, and I think that was it. I was like, "Whoa, this is me. This is what I'm into now." And since then it's just been a lifelong obsession. So I think it was about 13 when that happened. And since then I've just been from strength to strength when it comes to the wrestling. In the early 2000s, got mad into tape trading and stuff like that. I'd be getting these awful copies of terrible shows and stuff like that, or you get like a best of highlights. I think I still have my best of highlight low key, which is pretty cool actually. So that was one of my favorite one of my favorite wrestlers in the early 2000s. You know what I mean? And then I had like best of like Dynamite Kid and all these things as well. So like I had all these really cool ones, and like Ted DiBiase was like one of my favorite villains and stuff. So I had a bunch of his stuff as well. So it's so funny looking back. Like that's that was quite important. And then mid 2000s, there comes like the wrestling channel and all these things, and then the YouTube, internet, WWE Network comes later. How easy it is to get access to stuff.
It's crazy because like people don't have that fun anymore of like, oh, you've got that one, I'll give you this one for that one. Now it's oh, look, YouTube, I want to see WrestleMania, let me just look it up. I want to see this OT show, let me look it up. There's none of that anymore. It's gone. It's
almost hard to appreciate like good wrestling now because all of it's so good and all of it's so polished. Whereas if you go back and watch any event from any time period before ours, before this one, you're going to see some really weak wrestling, then you're going to see some really awesome wrestling, and like it stands out because there's a lot of weak wrestling as well. So whereas now, it doesn't matter who you turn on, they're all like very competent. You know what I mean? And it's just such a bizarre period. It's like as soon as you give everybody the access to early Ring of Honor, you give everybody the access to Noah, to All Japan, New Japan, all the access to all of the territory days. You've got just this wealth of sheer wrestling, and ability and knowledge to just watch and soak up. So it's no surprise to me that like everybody's so good now. Like I can go to a small independent show and there'll be a couple of people who are really good, or you go to a bigger independent show and everybody's friggin' good, whether they've been at it for 2 years or been at it for 10. Yeah. Whereas when I was first starting wrestling, it was definitely not at that level.
But the thing is, like, I think like people still have in their head though that there isn't this polished version of wrestling anymore. Like I myself was a bad victim. I always thought Irish wrestling was, like the indie, like not so good. And then went to my first show and I was like, oh my God, this is just as good. Like I was even on my lunch today talking to a lad and he goes, yeah, but it's not that good, is it? I went, go to a show and come back and tell me what you think. Because everything is so polished now and so good and everyone really puts the work in.
The proof was in the pudding there. Like, a lot of the lads who were coming to Ireland over the last 8 years, so many of us went to WWE, New Japan, TNA, we kind of infiltrated the rest of the world. So, I mean, so OTT must have been pretty good,
I mean, like, it's one thing, like everyone coming back as well, like, like you have the loyalists, like as soon as NXT UK unfortunately went down, Trent was right back into OTT. So like, it just that speaks for itself as well.
It was my first event coming out of WWE was with OTT, and it was just absolutely perfect because one of the main problems I had is obviously I was working a lot for ICW, Progress, Rev Pro over in the mainland, so I could only really work OTT when it kind of worked because just with dates and everything else. So I only really got to do OTT a little bit, like maybe like 5-6 dates or something like that. So one of the things I wanted to make sure when I came out of this, I wanted to really make a big effort to be available for OTT. Because I'm really passionate about trying to get this next generation at a level that is sustainable for the next 10, 20 years. You know what I mean? So I've done my very best to be available for as many of the shows. I think I've had about 80% of the shows since I got released. So I've done the best.
Well, you've been to every show I've been there, but the thing is as well, like talking about like helping the younger generations, and it really does seem to be like noticed. You put up a tweet the other day about like how better the locker rooms are, more professional they are, and to get the response from like LJ and everyone saying like how great it is to have you back, just speaks volumes.
Like those are one of the hardest parts I think with European wrestling and stuff like that is like I think there's a lot of cynicism from fans with what's happened over the last few years, but like I can't explain the difference from 19 years ago when it was effectively the Wild West, and you had no idea like what people would be doing in their day-to-days. You know what I mean? When stuff comes out later, you're like, oh, for God's sake, you know what I mean? But like this is the thing. Even like at the shows itself, the rings were a hazard. People in the audience could be at risk and things like that. Whereas realistically now, I don't know how it could really be safer. We always have the opportunity of paramedics and stuff on hand. We've got effectively the best technology possible ring-wise that will actually keep us safe as possible. While also, the rosters and everything else at this point couldn't be in a better. Oh my God, there couldn't be a better bunch now for new people coming in. And like, listen, I understand like a lot of fans have had I've had a difficult time of it, and there's a lot of malaise coming back after what the speaking out movement, after COVID and all these things. So, so I understand like you almost get, when you read stuff on the internet, you genuinely tend to believe it. And my main thing for everybody coming back, who are thinking about coming back, is give it a try and see how you feel. You know what I mean? Listen, I can only tell you from my experience as somebody who started in a much in a terrible situation. Like it wasn't a great area at all, for a variety of reasons. And then to the point where I got to WWE, did all these things, and then I come back and get to see like the sheer difference, even in wrestling quality. Like it kind of blows my mind. You know what I mean? So there's just so many good reasons to get back out there. And listen, I understand, when it comes to the malaise or when it comes to cynicism and stuff like that. Like, but if you are thinking about going, give it a try once and see how you feel. Like, go back to one show, and if you feel that it's worth it, then by all means, please, please make it a part of your regular habit. Because one of the things I've loved since coming back is the real passion. I think people realized, when COVID happened, it's very difficult. Like, you literally like you were taken away from everything. Sometimes you're taken away from everybody. And like that's speaking to my parents, speaking to my friends back home. Things were a lot harsher for you guys than they were in America. In America, it was very politicized. So there was certain states that nothing really happened. There were certain states where it was serious lockdowns. Now, I was in one of those states where after 2 weeks everything was kind of back to normal. So I didn't really. We only isolated. We made that decision ourselves as opposed to being forced to by the state. You know what I mean? So we isolated pretty hard and stuff like that because we were, the scariest thing for us would have been, ended up causing an older person difficulties. You know what I mean? So I do understand, a lot of noise coming up off the back of that, but I really appreciate hearing from the boys and stuff like that, from the fans who've come since I have been back, and that's been absolutely incredible. Like the feedback. I really wanted to put that up and put that out there because I wanted people to know that, like, I've been at this for a long time, and this is the happiest I've been in terms of, safety, in terms of, like, even as a fan, when I'm watching these shows, you know what I mean? Like, so I needed people to know that, like, because it means I could quite easily stay in America for the rest of my life, quite easily. But I choose to come here and I choose to be involved in the scene, and it's something like, I definitely feel super justified in those choices. And like, that's what I really wanted to put that out there. It was so funny because like I was on my way to one of the gyms with one of my mates here in Glasgow, and it just kind of hit me because we were talking about like the local scene here, and it really hit me, and I was like, oh, shit, it really has improved. There have been a lot of changes for the better and everything else. And I'm hoping that people can get by that cynicism eventually. But for me personally, it's amazing seeing the response from the workers, like the LJJ and a bunch of the others, who don't have to say anything. You know what I mean? Like, so it was very very made up, and I'm like, oh jeez, I'm getting emotional as I get older as well. I'm like, oh Christ. Now, at least I'm not impacting these boys negatively. That's kind of the key for me at this point.
But like, I'll say this, and I'll let Carmo ask a question. But like, you're not lying, because I remember I was at 8-year, and I swear to God, every 5-10 minutes, you just see yourself kind of walking past us, looking over at the ring, just watching the lads wrestle. And each time, my sister, God bless her, was like, "Is that Damo? Yeah, that's Damo." Jeez, it keeps coming out. I remember there was. I'll say one spot now. There was.
I wish there was a way I could do it more anonymously, but in that building, there's no way I can.
There's no way when you see this big man walking past, just like I remember.
I'm normally pretty stealthy. On the other venues, I'm really fucking stealthy, right? You won't see me. You just see my bald head maybe pop up every now and again, right? But sadly, in the National Stadium, there's nothing I could fucking do. I'm like, I have to walk by them. I'm like, sorry lads.
But like, I remember the funny story. Like there was the Trent spot where Trent jumped to the outside, and we all thought, oh fuck, something's actually going wrong. And you actually stopped, and you're looking over the ring going, oh shit, do I run down there? Even you had got caught then with Trent. You're just looking down the ring like, oh shit.
I'm like, am I gonna have to call the fucking ambulance here to get poison? You know what I mean?
run down and just beat the lads yourself.
Look, I just want to cut it back a small bit. So obviously, I believe you started wrestling around kind of 2005 era. What actually made you want to, I suppose, start wrestling? And kind of, I suppose, where did you start wrestling?
So great question. So when I was so I told you about when I was 13, everything starts changing, right? And you get access to all this wrestling. So like I was when I had about 15, 16, like I started really thinking about, do I want to do this? And I was involved in a EFED, which is where you role play as wrestlers, right? And I was doing it online. This is early internet, where like it's all about message boards back in that time, right? And MSN or AOL or whatever the hell it was, right? And then so I ended up speaking to a bunch of lads who were based in Scotland, which was pretty cool. And they went off to Canada to start wrestling training, and then they came back, opened a school with a bunch who went to wrestling training down in Kent. So they opened the school just outside of Glasgow. So I started thinking, right, I can maybe head over there, or else I go to the one in Manchester, or I can go all the way to Kent as well. So I was trying to make that decision, and I ended up deciding between Glasgow and Manchester. Manchester, obviously, because of football, and Glasgow because like I'd spent a lot of time there in Edinburgh and in Glasgow, and I ended up choosing, okay, I'll move to Edinburgh because I could pick up a college course with over in Edinburgh and use that as an excuse really to move, base myself in Scotland. So student loans, and then I moved across, and then when I was 18, so that was 2003, and then I started training at their grand opening, which would have been start of April 2004. So I first kind of made that decision about when I was about 15. So it took me about 2.5 years to really make it all come together. I worked like a Trojan to get a bunch of money leading up to it. I was working at a concrete factory in the summer before I moved to Edinburgh and stuff like that, just trying to get as much money together. I think I was also working in a bar, so I was doing 2 jobs to try and put as much money behind me as I could. And then when I got to Edinburgh, I picked up another job, so I made sure I had plenty of money to try and get ready to go. And then that's what I did. And so I started school there. Yes, it wasn't like full of incredible trainers or anything like that, at least not at first. And then I started traveling around to try and find other coaches, seminars, and things like that. And at first, it's just can I wrestling? Can I fall over? Can I do this? Can I do that? And then eventually, it's like, yes, I can. Now, can I get a match? Can I get a match outside of the country? Can I start working on a semi-regular basis? Can I make it from a hobby to a part-time job? And at that point, you're like, okay, it's a part-time job. Can I make it a full-time job? Then brilliant, yes, I can. And then now, full-time job, can I make it a career? Can I make it something to depend on? And that was pretty much over the course of the next 10 years or whatever. I think it was 11 years. By the time I got signed to WWE, so like there was that long distance in between from 2004 to 2011, where there was a lot of changes in the wrestling industry. There was a lot of changes in technology and things like that as well. YouTube gets bigger and social media starts becoming a deal. So that wide world suddenly is getting smaller. So it's a lot easier to showcase who we are and things like that. And that I noticed that from about 2011 into the 2013, 2014 is when shit just started to explode for a lot of us. You know what I mean? Like that group from Scotland who I work with, there was a bunch of really good guys who were coming out of that. And they pretty much formed the backbone of ICW. There was a similar amount of people kind of in and around that Kent area. There's a bunch of ones coming through out of London, Kent, that kind of stuff. So Progress started making its way forward. The same with Portsmouth into London for Rev Pro. So there's a little pockets here and there, and then OTT there in Ireland. So in Dublin, because there've been a couple of decent promotions in Ireland, but they all kind of seem to crop up right before I left, or sorry, just after I left. So I never really got a chance with Ireland until a bit later in my career. But it was just so interesting, all these areas like Manchester, Birmingham, 2 areas there seemed to be a bunch of lads coming out of there. So when you fast forward to, like, I've been wrestling like 10 years, so 2013, 2014, whatever it is, there's now a serious amount of talent all there ready to go. We've had this period where we've had a lot of like Americans coming in. We've had a lot of like Japanese or Mexicans coming in, and we've been learning from them. And now some promoters like ICW, Progress, or Pro OTT are putting the best of the best of all the areas against each other, while also sprinkling in a couple of the lads from Europe, like Tommy End or Walter or whatever else. So suddenly you're in this position where you've went from maybe like 2 to 4 good guys on a show. Now there's 16 top guys on shows, and there's a bunch waiting in the wings ready to take those places. So that little rise was utterly insane, and it was just like, when I really look back at it, because at the time I just take everything as it comes. When I look back at it, it was this really sharp rise from that like 2011, 12 to like 2016 was just, it was nuts. It was absolutely nuts. And like the ones then, so yeah, some of us could sign a WWE and whatever else, or New Japan or whatever else, and then the ones who were coming after us were just as good, if not better. So it was a really crazy generation of talent that was ready to go. So, but all that started because there was just so many like lads doing a really bad job for a long time. eventually it all clicks, and we all start wrestling each other in all these different areas, and all get to come together because there was promoters with maybe a bit deeper pockets who were able to put more fans in the buildings, and then kind of choose the best of the areas. So when I look back, like, it was this nuts, period, of a few years, but it does make sense as to why it happened. You know what I mean? So because it was a lot of talent.
But then, obviously, you fast forward, you sign with the WWE and you make your debut on NXT, coming to the crowd, and it's revealed that, well, it's not really revealed, but you help out Sanity. Obviously, then I think Sawyer Fulton got injured, and you take the spot of Sawyer Fulton. What was it like the first run in NXT, working with Eric Young, Nikki, and Alexander Wolf, he was called?
Phenomenal. So, like, I wasn't meant to debut with Sanity. I was meant to debut. So when I got signed, my first day was, I think it was October, the November, and I got told, right, probably going to hold you off until January. We're going to do this tournament in the UK. There's a bunch of you who are going to be doing that. And I was like, oh, okay, no problem, whatever you need. You know what I mean? Like, pretty easy. I'm doing all the house shows and whatever. And then Sawyer Fulton gets hurt in Canada, I think it is. He tears his pectoral right off his bone. Like, he literally has the freakiest of freak injuries. And Sanity has just started. It's getting hot. It's getting a great response. So, they were like, right, we'll put Damo in there. You know what I mean? It was like, literally, I got told on the day that I was debuting with Sanity. They hadn't even decided what they were going to call me at this point yet. It was like, they did, none of this had been decided. Literally, I think I got to work and I had to go back home to pick up clothes that like looked different, like the hoodie, the jeans, whatever else. Because I would have just had like my my smart casual clothes and my wrestling gear. You know what I mean? So like I didn't expect to be involved at all. So I had to go and get like a hoodie, jeans, all this kind of stuff. Like just try and like be like a grungy kind of character, so they made that decision on the day. I'm like, oh Christ! And I think actually when I got there, somebody said, "Yeah, you're doing this tonight." I was like, "What? Nobody's told me." Like, and I'm obviously like, I had really mixed emotions on that first day because I felt like the biggest dick in the universe because Sawyer Fulton got hurt, and I'm effectively replacing him. And I got on really well with Sawyer. I spent time with him. He's one of the lads who I'd actually spent a bit of time with when I first got there, because he was, Nicky's in the group with him. He's a really good lad. He lives with one of my friends as well. So, like, I kind of saw him a bunch, So I felt like a terrible person, you know what I mean? Like, because it's my dream job. It's finally happened, but I'm also doing it at the expense of somebody else. So that really sucked. But at the same time, flip side is, and this was explained to me by Terry Taylor. He said, "If not you, then who?" So. And that took me a few weeks to really get my head around because you feel like a terrible person. But I spent obviously Nikki was one of my significant others. We'd been together for 11 years or something like that at that point. No, I'm wrong. 9 years, 8 years or something. And then EY had wrestled before. We did a couple of shows together for TNA. Alexander Wolf I'd met in WXW in Germany, and he actually gave me really good advice leading up to one of my tryouts. That helped me massively. Actually, he's a really smart guy. and he had been really nice to Nicky when Nicky first moved over there. Like he's a really, really good human being. And he was really sound to Nick before Sanity even formed. You know what I mean? They just happened to be going like traveling to the Download Festival, whatever. And him and Sawyer were actually really lovely to Nicky. So it's just, you know, you start to realize there's some really good fucking lads here. And you know, getting to learn under Eric Young, who's 20 years TV experience, so maybe it's 16 at that point or whatever it was. You know, all this TV experience, you know, and I've watched Eric for years, by the way. This is even funnier. When I wrestled him in TNA, I was, I think I told him years later when I was traveling with him, I was like, I used to watch you all the fucking time, you know what I mean? Like, and I one of my biggest pops was when he played the comedy character. He was locking up with like the crowd members and stuff like that. I thought that was the funniest thing I've ever seen. Like, so I'd make him do it every now and again, you know what I mean? Just randomly run up to him, lock up with him in the middle of the fucking pub or whatever, you know. But honestly, like learning under him was brilliant because, you know, we would have frustrations and stuff like that. He would explain like, you know, why we've no need to be, you know what I mean, and things like that. So it's like there was some great experience coming from him, you know, that we needed that maybe a lot of the other NXT guys didn't have, you know, and they would get, you know, frustrated or scared for the spot or whatever else. You know, EY was really good at kind of allaying those fears, especially when we were first there, you know. And then eventually, you know, like you can just start concentrating on the matches and things like that. And you saw that like when Sanity first started, like we were villains, you know, we were meant to be like the, you know, the evil heels to Ty Dillinger, whoever it was. We got all the way up to NXT Orlando. We fought against Hero, Dillinger, Roderick Strong. So pretty much, you know, everybody outside of the top babyface was who we were feuding with at the time. And then we go into this feud with AOP. We're meant to be the heels. They're meant to be the babyfaces. You know, they wanted to put AOP as babyface. I don't know why. It was a terrible idea. And the fans decided, no, it'll be Sandy as the babies. Yeah. And that was very cool. And that was a lot of that's down to Axel and Nikki's energy, because they brought this incredible frenetic energy to Sanity. EY and I are obviously meant to be more stoic, you know, a bit more reserved. Like the first email I got when I joined Sanity coming from creative, which was from Hunter, was Kelly needs to be stoic because Sawyer Fulton was just as crazy as Alexander Wolf. They didn't want a like for like replacement, which I was delighted with because I just couldn't have brought myself to be a like for like replacement. And also, like, you know, I don't think we don't look the same. You know, we've got a very different style of wrestling. So I'm so glad he allowed me to. His choice was to make me stoic. I was like, thank Chris for that. Like, don't get me wrong, being stoic can have its own disadvantages. You can't react to certain things. But as you know, Sanity evolved, I was able to start showing, you know, more range and stuff like that. But like at first, I just literally had to fucking stand there, you know,
you're the big guy,
which is hilarious. You know, just like angry. But like, you know, eventually, you know, you're able to show more emotions. You're allowed to, you know, as we became babyface, it meant I could start doing a lot more of my cooler moves and stuff like that because I couldn't really do them as a heel. At least at that point, they didn't want us doing it. That would change later, where, you know, they were like, no, like, do whatever, you know, we want you to just go and be cool and be good at this, which is hilarious because when we first got there, it was like, you must do this and you must do that, you can't do that, whatever. But like NXT evolved, you can kind of see it with the influx of European talent. You know, as they started trusting us, they started realizing, holy shit, these guys are good. Let's just let them do what they want to do, and that's literally what happened. You can see it from Takeover Chicago onwards. You know what I mean? It was Pete and Tyler had this killer match that you know, they just went and just did their thing. You know, and like it was the first time a producer didn't overly produce and just let the boys go. And you can kind of look at from there as kind of the start of this whole new renaissance of NXT. And we suddenly went from, you know, having good shows to fucking great shows, like on a very, very regular basis. And like a lot of that came down to the reins just came off a little bit. We were given that little bit more leash to go and, you know, have good matches. You know what I mean? So, and like, you know, obviously there was good things and bad things that because of that, you know what I mean, did towards the end, did most of the shows maybe get a little bit too samey, maybe, you know, maybe we'd kind of hit our formula a bit too much. But there was this wonderful period in between where, Jesus Christ, there were some really good shows, you know, whether the ones I was on or not, brilliant stuff. Like, Some of the best matches I've ever seen. You know what I mean? And I'd be sitting in the crowd. I'd go out to the crowd and go, I need to experience this. This is fucking mental. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was incredible. That first run was a lot of fun for us. We kind of got stunted a little bit at the end because they weren't sure when they were going to promote us and stuff like that. So Sanity's last kind of couple of months were a bit stop-start, whatever else. Like I was meant to do that feud with Lars in the January around Rumble, but he couldn't. Something happened to him, like I think he got injured or whatever else. So we that got put on the shelf. So I ended up doing this thing really briefly with Tommy End, did a couple of shows, Alistair Black, which was cool because Tommy and I had wrestled in the Indies before, and we actually wrestled each other at our tryout. We both got signed, so it was kind of cool. And then I'm trying to think what. Then I did the ladder match, and then even after the ladder match, I think it had been announced we were maybe going to get promoted, but it still wasn't happening. So I then went into the short feud with Lars. So there was just a lot. That was one of the main problems towards the end. It was like, because at that point NXT is just waiting and being told what's next from the higher ups with Vince and whatever else. So we were kind of twiddling our thumbs a little bit, waiting to see what's next, until they decided what they wanted to do. We would get promoted. So but that little run leading up to that's 20. I'd say 2017 ended up being one of the coolest years of my career because if you look at the very start, like the matches I was having were okay. We're playing the kind of villain role, and it's not necessarily robotic, but it's very WWE kind of style. Then I had a bunch of matches in the Damo Festival, like in May, June, I think it was, where I wrestled Drew Galloway and stuff like that. And I think one of the writers, really weird the way he said it, he was like, I didn't realize you were that good. I was like, oh, so then they booked me against Drew and a bunch of others and stuff like that. So it was like, the kind of realization dawned on people that actually these Europeans are actually pretty decent, and then that meant, again, after Takeover Chicago and all this, the rain started coming off like everybody's match, and that led to the really cool war games and stuff for me, and then there was a really cool 4-way in like the November, December, that I did with like Johnny Gargano, Lars, and Alistair Black. So it was getting a chance to showcase like Killian could potentially be like in that kind of upper bracket, as a singles dude. Whereas before, like the start of that year, I was like tagging or doing 6-man, tags or whatever. And so I had a really and also getting through Mania and stuff like that in 2017 was nuts. So I really had one of those crazy years. And when I look back on it, I remember I put a post on Instagram because I got a chance to get traveled home to Ireland for Christmas, and I was like, that was a fucking mental year. It really was.
But I think the cherry on top of them actually giving you the singles run was that ladder match. I was there in New Orleans for that ladder match, and what a way to open up Takeover.
That's some other.
Oh my God, it was amazing. But how was it actually being in that match? Because the crowd was wild from the get-go.
So one of the coolest parts of that match is, so when the 6 of us were planning that match, so we had 2 people to debut. So it was Ricochet's first match, EC3's first match, and then the other 4 of us, so myself, Dream, Adam, and Lars. So what we tried to do with the structure of the match was quite simple. We need to try and make it look different than every other ladder match, which is hard because there's been brilliant ladder matches, there's been bad ladder matches, right? So we made this pact. The 6 of us were like, right, no matter what happens, you're going to try and climb that ladder as fast as you can, and if the person doesn't stop you, you win the belt, right? Even though we knew that the winner has to be Adam, right? So it just means that no matter what happens, if we're charging up that ladder, then the next person has to come in, right? And that, because we made that agreement going forward, we knew, and even right before we went out, people were like, that's what we want to fucking do. And there's a couple of brilliant moments where you see somebody gets really fucking high up, and then the next guy runs in last second. And that was our goal. And it's something that, I even remember speaking to Valentine Dream about it, because he, great, for all his faults and whatever else people want to talk about, hell of a wrestling mind, and hell of a wrestling mind. So I remember him and I really spoke about this before we spoke to the group about this psychology of just trying to win that belt, because you could watch a ladder match every now and again. The guy does the slow climb at the start of a match. And like we explain like that's okay if it's me going slowly, but like if it's Ricochet, like that motherfucker's way faster than me, so he should be showing that he's way faster than me. You know what I mean? Especially early. So we were really proud that when we did do the match and people did respond so positively to it, it was because of things like that. Like when yes, there was spots, yes, there was crazy stuff, whatever else, but we tried to keep the relatively cool psychology that we were aiming for all along, and we wanted to make sure there was a cool moment where all six of us somehow end up on ladders and trying to climb. And that was probably the most convoluted part, and the only thing that really sucked about the finish of the match, the ladder that is used right in the middle breaks when they do this incredible spot where. And as we practice it where Ricochet springboards in onto Lars's back and Lars just keeps climbing the ladder, and it was fucking incredible. We did it. We practiced it and we're like, oh yeah, that's fucking brilliant. But on the day we'd use that ladder for one minor spot. Like I can't remember. It was something really like small. So when they did the springboard, the fucking ladder shattered. And you're like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like, so we didn't take that into account when we planned the match. Yes, Lars is a big man. Yes, Ricochet is going to come with some fucking force. So the fact that finish, that match was all done on the fly, gives you an idea the real talent of that match, because we planned a lot of really cool things. It all went really well, but right at the end, the ladder let us down, and the boys still managed to finish and have a really cool fucking finish. So, all respect to, I think it was Lars, Adam, Ricochet, and you were involved in that final part. Tip of the cap to them, because that was on them, that's on their ability, and the response we got after was outstanding, because like we know we put a fucking shift in to make that as much sense as we could. We knew we were competing with the entirety of WrestleMania, we were competing with the entirety of the takeover, but the crowd was there for us from every tiny little thing. Like there's even a cool moment when we're all looking at each other right at the start and the crowd just felt it, and you're like, shit, that's awesome. That it doesn't always happen that way. No. The week before we were filming, so Ricochet, making his debut on television before he's going to be, inserted into the ladder match, right? And we do it. It's all six of us staring off or something like that. And I remember coming backstage, and Hunter fucking hated it. The crowd just maybe weren't the reaction he wanted. I don't know I can't really remember what he disliked about the stare off. So that was obviously in the back of our head when we were coming up with the match itself. So we were like, right, so we're going to have to do the stare because the bell has to ring, and then we have to decide what's next. But there was a really cool moment. All six of us were standing, and the crowd just immediately erupted. I'm like, shit, we haven't even started yet. So immediately, like the hairs in the back of your neck, and I've got many of them, but the hairs in the back of your neck start going. You know what I mean? They start raising. You're like, shit, this is going to be something cool. And amazingly, they stayed with us the entire way. And the response afterwards was amazing, and like the fact that people got what we were going for was I'm assuming that's the same of what it is when somebody writes a movie or writes a script or whatever, like it comes off the way they hoped it would, because that's what that match was for all of us. It was there botches? Sure, like the ladder fucking broke and stuff like that. Did we change things on the fly? Yes, we did. Even a little part in the middle, there's a part at the start, like things did change. But realistically, that was the vision of six people. We did our very best to try and make everybody look good and everybody have their moments and stuff like that. And thankfully we did. And then when Adam won, it was a big fucking deal. People were very happy or angry, depending on who you wanted to win. And yeah, we set up the rest of that weekend. So I'm sure I wouldn't have liked to have followed it, but that's a good way to kick off the weekend,
Well, I can say I was screaming when Adam won. But my favorite, honest to God, my favorite spot of that whole match was and Mauro Ronaldo, bless him, like what a man, sold this spot
so good. I loved working with him. With him.
Oh, I can only imagine, but like
I still text him every now and again. He's a great fucking lad.
The spot where you and Lars one up each other with grabbing one lad, having one lad on the ladder, and just diving through it, and Mauro's there. Gotta hope there's a warehouse somewhere nearby, because just the one up at each other was brilliant. Well, fast forward then, obviously awesome. You get release from the WWE, and we're now fast forwarding. You just had an incredible match at Homecoming with Ricky Knight Jr. and you even at the very end of the match, like, lads, remember this name. What was that match like? Because it was my opinion. I don't know about Carol. We were both there. That was my match of the night.
That's awesome. Appreciate that. Thank you. So we had wrestled before in Rev Pro, not long, maybe about a month after I did OTT for the first time when I came back. And the match was fine. Like, it was decent, but it wasn't like by any means special, right? And like, that's down to me and him. It wasn't any specific reason. So when we were planning that match in Dublin, and I'd met Ricky a few times at shows and stuff, and I get on really well with him. He's a good lad. It's like talking to a 35-year-old. Like, it's fucking annoying. 23, and he's got this fucking, he's got a great mature brain. And I noticed when we were in the ring, he was a lot more relaxed. And I think he trusted me a lot more. Not that he didn't trust me the first time, but I think he now knows that I'm not out to get him or anything. You know what I mean? And I think, like, when we were in, and we were just buoyed by you guys. You guys just ate up what we were serving, and that helps, because it's like we were able to change a lot of stuff that we maybe had planned because you guys were reacting in a certain way. So it helped. A lot more of what we did come across as natural, because it was. And he's so mature for a fella at that age, that it made it very easy. If I could change, I could talk to him and say, right, we'll maybe do this, or and it works great, because I could have been against somebody who maybe didn't have that trust, or maybe didn't have the ability yet, to be able to change things and react to the crowd. And I've had matches like that myself years ago, where I wasn't able to change things. So Ricky, with the talent he has right now, he's a stunning talent, was able to go with the flow, and as you guys were going for everything we were doing, so you guys understood our story, which is even better. So and we were able to really go for it. This young upstart, who's not intimidated by anything. You know what I mean? So we were trying to tell that little story, and fair play to him. He plays that role really well. And we ended up having that match. It was very cool, because the first time we wrestled, it just wasn't there. So to be able to do it, especially to do it in Ireland, for me, means a lot. You know what I mean? Because I didn't get a million chances to wrestle in Ireland, and I never got a chance to wrestle in Ireland for WWE. A lot of people don't know this, but so the year of COVID, 2020, I was meant to return I was meant to come to NXTUK for the first time for the Dublin takeover. And like that was, and even worse than that, it was meant to be the reunite with Sanity in Dublin, which would have been nuts.
I was supposed to be there.
There you go. So this is the first I've told this story. So there you go. You've got a exclusive, because I keep forgetting. But so for me to get a chance to now compete on a regular basis in Ireland is awesome, and to be against an opponent like Ricky is sick, because he's got something special about him. He's only getting better. And the coolest part is, we wrestled again in London this week, and it was even better again. And it's like, I'll tell you this, if I'm still going in 5 years' time, that match will be outstanding. But honestly, like, I'm so glad you guys reacted really well to him coming in as well, because sometimes it's difficult, with a brand new person, with no promos and no real build up, to really know like what you're going to get from him. But these were so given to him, and you guys, since I've come back, you've just become really like really fun to wrestle for. You know what I mean? Like that. I love the OTT crowd. Like, especially when I came out of the National Stadium earlier in the year. Jesus Christ! I was only there for a 6-man tag, and you just fucking put me over strong. I was like, oh jeez. I was like, Jesus, boys, there's 6 more matches to go after this. But I appreciate it. I really do. But the honestly, God, so because the crowd was there for us, it was very easy for us to go and have this killer match. Like we only had like a couple of ideas for certain things in the middle part of the match, but because you just reacted, we just went did more and more and more, and then we eventually meandered back into the story that we'd come up with, beforehand. So to be able to kind of go back and forward between On the Fly and what we planned was wicked, and that's a testament to him as a talent to be that good at 23. Like I expect that stuff from Kofi Kingston and Daniel Bryan and stuff. Those are the boys we were wrestling on a regular basis in WWE. So I expect that kind of ability from them. I don't really expect it from Ricky Knight Jr. Not yet. But the truth is, he's as good as any. You know what I mean? Like, and to say that now, imagine what he's going to be like. He's my age. You know, Christ on a bike. Like that's frightening, really. But I'm really glad he's enjoyed it, and hopefully he'll be back very soon for OTT.
Oh, please God. Like, it was honest to God, an absolute, like, it was my, I don't know, I'm not going to speak for Karen, it was my match of the night. But I think as well, like, just to go back to what you're saying earlier on about COVID and how, like, it was, like, just awful here. I think because we had that taken away from us, to have it back, now everything, like Homecoming, start to finish, crowd were here. Start to finish. Like, it was
awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'll let Mr. Karen. Oh, sorry.
I think that's the cool thing, though. No, just very quickly, I think because we weren't able to bring NXT to Dublin, instead OTT's having their own version of NXT and maybe doing it better. You know, and that's one of the cool parts of the National Stadium is like being able to put 2,000 people in a really intimate atmosphere and then put on a hell of a card. You know, maybe you don't need WWE.
It's true. I will say though, just very quickly, and I'll let you ask the question, Carmo. Like, I was supposed to go to NXT Dublin, and it was literally 2 days before my birthday. I was over the moon excited because I know, like, the main event was supposed to be Walter Finn, UK title with Finn going over. When it got cancelled, I was so disappointed. So disappointed. I was like, the one pay-per-view.
Well,
it just gets worse and worse. Carmo, I'll let you ask a question now while I cry.
I had front row seats to that event as well, so it kind of made it really worse. But yeah, look, we've got Scrapper Mania coming up within the next week or two as of time of recording. Obviously, you had a bit of a change in opponent with now Eddie Kingston coming in. You fought Eddie Kingston before, but look, I was chatting to a few people at the last OTT show, and like this match is just so exciting. It's going to absolutely knock the house down. But like from your own point of view, how exciting is it from you?
Honestly, like I remember, so Eddie and I wrestled in Seattle, which was very neutral territory for both of us, right? And the crowd was just outstanding. Like we had a wonderful experience there, right? And it was our first time ever touching. We met a bunch of times, and we became quite friendly and stuff. We traveled together a bunch, right? But we've never really wrestled. So this is the first time we got to wrestle, and it was a lot of fun. We have very similar likes and dislikes when it comes to wrestling. So, you know, immediately when we went out there, we didn't plan, like, again, similar to Ricky Knight Jr., we left a huge chunk, but we didn't plan anything. And we just went out and beat the shit out of each other, and the crowd loved it. So, you know, the truth is, when we did it in Dublin, which is what we said, I said to Eddie, I was like, shit, I'd love if we could do this in fucking Ireland one day. You know what I mean? And he was like, fucking hell yeah, because he's part Irish. A lot of people don't know this. He's part,
is he?
Half Puerto Rican, half Irish. So that he's very excited to he's been in OTT before, and he's been in Ireland before, but I think, you know, it's something he'd love to try and explore a little bit more, is a bit more about this, you know this country, really. So, you know, he's looking forward to come over and, like, listen, when we're in there, I'm going to be forcing him to put on something that something very special. Like, that's the best way to describe it. Like, and I know he's going to bring it regardless. You know what I mean? So, and like, yes, it was disappointing that John Moxley's not going to be there. Like, it's, you know, AEW made an incredible decision there, which, you know, sucks for OTT, but it means the rest of us get a chance to, you know, to prove to you that, you know, you've made the right decision to still come to the show. And I know Eddie's going to put on as good a performance as he possibly can. I'm going to fucking force it out of him regardless. And I'm sure he'll force plenty out of me as well, beat the shit out of me. So we're going to do our very best to put on something really special and tear the roof off the place in Dublin. Like, especially after that reaction I got, you know, Homecoming, the reaction, you know, was outrageous. You know what I mean? So I want to try and do my very best to reward the fact that these are still there, because I get it is disappointing that John Moxley's not going to be there. I'm disappointed. I wanted to kick his ass. You know what I mean? So, you know, we're going to do our very best. I know that a lot of the people on the card, there's still a couple of cool names to be announced yet. So, you know, I'm really hoping these are very happy with that. And I'm actually really happy with how it's all coming together. I got to be at the Dublin show, the kind of lead-in show, and it was great hearing from Joe O'Brien and the boys there, like what they're looking for from a lot of the other matches. So I'm very excited to see how it's all going to pay off, and that's what I've loved being a part of this scene. I've been able to help a bunch of the lads. Like this last time I was there, I was helping a bunch of the younger lads and a bunch of the Italian lads. There's now like 6 of them or something like that in OTT. So I was kind of sitting down with a few of them and talking it through, just over a bunch of little things. And I'm hoping that in the next couple of years, you're going to really start seeing like the serious talent level from the ones who are newer to the promotion. You know what I mean? So because there's just so much talent, it's doing my head in how good they are at young ages. You know what I mean? I've got to break all their legs. You know, at this point, it's getting very difficult. Like to try and keep them down for a couple of years. You know, like the old school vet here. Like,
don't be thinking you're getting out anytime fast, lads. Damo's there.
That's it. You know, shit. He's not pushing me out just yet, boys. You know, I'm gonna fucking stay here for a while. You know. But yeah, honestly, God, like really looking forward to Scrapper. Like this is my first Scrapper, so I've been at almost all the other shows except for Scrapper. So it'd be very cool to do it. And as I say, like, you know, with the way things went, with the way things had to change, with, you know, the problem of schedule and all that kind of crap, like I know there's a real hunger in this crew. They do not want to disappoint, and like that's what I really felt at that Dublin show there just past. I felt like a lot of people were like really cognizant of how they want to keep as much time as possible for the main event. So a lot of them really put a good shift into, you know, a good shift into get their stuff done, you know, a little bit quicker than maybe normal, because they're trying to put themselves in a position where they're like, okay, need to leave as much possible time for that main event. The main event's going to be outrageous, you know, Omari and Sammy D. So I noticed that as well at the last show, and the last couple of shows especially have just been talented matches after talented matches. It's been outstanding. So I'm very, very, very excited for Scrapper Mania. It's going to be great in Wolves as well on the night before. None of us are going to drink. We're going to be good lads, you know. I can't guarantee there might not be a couple of hungover bodies for Belfast, but you know, I'm a Belfast boy, so I'll be making sure I've got plenty of energy in the tank for whatever they have in store for me in Belfast. And knowing me, it'll be something even harder than Eddie Kingston.
So I feel like every Irish person goes like, we won't drink that night, and then you do it anyways. Because
no, I will say this: we were quite reasonable. So at the last Wolves show, we all had like a beer and went to bed. It was hard to believe it was a bunch of wrestlers. We're going to do our very best to do the same this time around, because realistically, like we all want to make sure that everybody gets the best possible version of us. You know what I mean? And I told you there's a real fire in the belly, there's a real chip on the shoulder because of the Moxley thing. So you're going to see. I'd be amazed if you're not walking out of the show thinking, "Holy shit, that was the best show I've seen in Ireland." Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's what we're going for.
Do you know, I put out a tweet when the news dropped, obviously, of Mox not being there, because I said, you know, if you're thinking of refunding, don't. Homecoming is the biggest example of we don't have the person we advertise, but fuck, we put on a show. Do you know?
Yeah.
Homecoming speaks everything about it, and Scrapper Mania will be no different. In fact, it will be different because it's going to be 10 times better.
Yeah. Absolutely, you're right, and that was a good promo. I like it. I appreciate it. You know, but it's true. Like, you know, we knew that Eddie couldn't make it. Like, sadly, Jay Briscoe's death, like, was, you know, one of the biggest things, and it actually hit a lot of us. You know, for those of us who knew Jay, and even for the ones who didn't know Jay, like, you know, he died in a really awful way that any person on the planet could die, and you know, the story was so real. Like, driving his 2 kids to fucking, you know, cheerleading practice. You know, it wasn't. You know, this is 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You know, this wasn't nighttime. It wasn't dark. It wasn't. There's no drink, no drugs involved. It was literally like a normal man bringing his kids to a practice, and sadly, you know, losing his life. You know, so it hit a lot of people really hard, and it hit a lot of people, like especially like the likes of Eddie, who would have loved nothing more to have came to Homecoming. But when we realised that the Sunday was the funeral, and we only found that out, you know, as you do, the few days leading up to it is when these things get finalized. And you know, you guys know, you live in Ireland, you know, sometimes these things go really fast, or sometimes, you know, they can drag depending on the situation. We found out he had to be there by the Sunday, and like he didn't want to risk it, and I don't blame him. No. Not one person in that locker room blamed Eddie Kingston. And there had been a drop off, like, you know, not one person would have blamed him, you know. So I'm so glad he wants to make it back up to everybody. And you know, I know he's going to put a hell of a shift in, you know. And well, as I told you before, we're going to beat the shit out of each other one way or the other.
Someone's not walking out of that arena that night.
We'll carry each other to the bar. That's probably what we will actually.
But I'll let Mr. Cameron in this one more question.
So I suppose obviously you put out the tweet recently saying that sure, you're happy where you are, you're enjoying work, and I suppose between Ireland and the UK and even a bit further.
Yeah.
Is that the goal for the next year? Have you any kind of goals set for the next year? I suppose, are there any titles that you're looking to go for the next year? What's the plan?
Honestly, so the coming out of WWE, my first thought was, right, this is a huge opportunity to spend more time at home. Because I tried to explain this, you know, earlier on in the podcast. I do a lot of US indies, and I can easily spend like huge chunks of time in the US, right? There's so many indies and there's so many states, you know, so there's a lot of opportunities. And I've got great relationships with a lot of companies over there. But, you know, I made a conscientious decision that I want to spend, you know, I kind of feel these are my peak years, and I want to use them as wisely as I can, you know. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I do turn down work in certain places and whatever. So I try to keep myself open for the likes of OTT, Progress. I'm now trying to reintegrate ICW back into my booking sheets and stuff like that. And Rev Pro, I've just started there again. So it's like I'm trying my best to balance my life with my own with my work life, you know. So I'm going to be in Orlando 2 to 3 weeks a month, and then the other 2 weeks or so I'll be in Ireland or the UK, and trying to balance my life around that is the fun part, but also, you know, the most ridiculous part of this, right? But you know, it's needs, must, and things like that. My wife's got a very understanding wife, as you guys can understand. So my goal anyway is to continue with this and continue with the working relationships I've built up here, help wherever I can help, and literally do my very best to help take everything here to another level. When I first got released, you know, I struggled a little bit to find my feet with regards to what I'd learned in WWE with what I knew intrinsically as a worker. And this, you know, the year coming out of that was a lot of fun. There was highs, there was lows, there was decisions that, you know, I didn't necessarily need to make, and there's decisions that, you know, I wish I had have made, you know, whether that was with work or whether that was what I was doing in the ring and whatever else. Whereas now I've kind of found that kind of happy medium. I've found the balance. You know, I'm liking what I'm doing with my life in total, and I'm loving what I'm doing in the ring, and I'm loving the reactions I'm getting wherever I'm going. Is a testament to people don't hate what I'm putting on as part of my art. You know, people aren't hitting it, so that helps a lot as well. So as I say, you know, I'm going to ride this momentum as long as I can, enjoy it as long as I can. I'm very lucky that, you know, I've been very lucky with injuries in my career. I've been very injury free. I really believe in prehab, which is, you know, rehabbing your body before injury as opposed to rehabbing your body after injury. And I've had great education with these things, you know, through WWE really helped with that, but also from the people I've met post WWE as well. So I'm at a point where my body's in great nick. I'm not going to lie, you know, I'm feeling great. I'm about. I'd love to be as heavy as I was. That would be incredible if I could do, you know, but it's just impossible to live at that weight and wrestle at, you know, the intensity I want to wrestle at 23 stone. It's impossible. But you know, I'm sitting at 20 stone right now, and that's a very easy weight to enjoy and to still be Big Damo. I may not be very Big Damo anymore, but I can still be a relatively Big Damo, and I think that works for me. But like, I understand, like, you know, for people who are coming out on a regular basis and seeing us, we still want to try and make it as exciting, like, you know, matches and storylines and all these kind of things. So, but that's what one of the fun parts of Progress is, which is a bit more of a storyline based company, has been great for me. And just found out that myself and Axel are going to be teaming up a lot more. So Alexander Wolf from Insanity, the two of us just announced there last Sunday that we'd be going forward as a tag team in Progress. So that's something that maybe like to look into bringing to Ireland at some point. I'd love to bring into ICW, bring into OTT, you know, absolutely. And that's something I know that Insanity version of Eric Young and Axel came to Limerick at one point. So we'd maybe like to bring. That's the only show I couldn't make, by the way. It would have been fucking brilliant. Would have been maybe us, with the Kings would have been very cool. But the one time I was booked, you know what I mean. Elsewhere, I couldn't make it. Missed, the actual, But honestly, though, so that's the immediate goal. Long term goal, yes, I wouldn't mind to have a look at Omari's OTT championship. That is something that's always going to be in the back of my head. Could that be something that we could maybe do in Dublin or do in Belfast at some point? That is something that I'm definitely thinking about. But outside of that, my overall goal is to help raise the scene. I'd love to get to a point where the fans feel about this generation the way they felt about my generation, my 2015, 2016 crew. So that is my goal, is to try and help raise that to that level. And then come what may, you know what I mean? If that means somebody gets a television deal or something, that's fantastic. You know what I mean? That would be marvelous. I want to help any of these ones who want to go further abroad. They want to get to WWE or AEW or whatever else. I'll do my very best to help them. But for the rest of them who want to really help the scene that's here, right now, then shit, I'm here. I'm here to help. So just come and ask me, and I'll do whatever I can. And that goes with promoters, and it goes with trainers and stuff like that as well. I always try to say, I'm here. So fucking, I'm more than willing to answer a question. I promise I won't charge you. Just if there's anything I can do to help. And that's something that Axel Tischer is very. He's the exact same, based in Germany. That's the mindset he has as well. And it's the same with Trent Seven, based in England. We all have that situation. We want to help as much as we possibly can. And we want to leave this business better than we found it. That is our number one goal, and we're doing our very best to make that happen.
Well, I'll end this with just two more things. So obviously you mentioned missing out on the OTT show in Limerick. Well, just saying, there's a promotion in Limerick run by Steve Savage. If you ever want to pop up and give us a pop, feel free to come to Limerick. But I'll end this quickly with, so this is going to come out next week, and I know Emmett, who's one of the marks here, is listening, and he still hasn't booked time off work. He's not listening to me for Scrapper Mania. But there's one person I know he will listen to, and that's Mr. Big Dame. If you could just help me out here and tell Emmett to book a fucking day off for Scrapper Mania.
Emmett, will you ever get your fucking finger out, for Christ's sake? How often do you see your big pal in the middle of Dublin? You don't, right? Get your day off work. Up you go, have a day of it, have a laugh, have a couple of beers after, and we'll all be happy Gilmore, right?
Thank you so much. He was supposed to do it today, he didn't, and I'm gonna kick his ass for it. But Damo, thank you so much for coming on. We wish you the best of luck against Eddie Kingston. I know for a fact that's going to absolutely tear the place down. Literally, it's the National Stadium is going to need to rebuild afterwards.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, boys. And listen, thank you very much for donating towards the charities as well. Listen,
no problem.
For anybody out there, I'm doing my very best to help two charities based in Belfast. The Welcome Organisation, which is a homeless charity, are doing incredible work. They've got a mobile clinic. They have a women's crisis division and everything as well. So, whether it's £5, £10, or anything else, even if it's £1, if you can donate, that'd be fantastic. Also, West Wellbeing, which is a mental health charity based in Northern Ireland, based in Belfast, which has found that there's been an incredible amount of suicides coming off the back of COVID, and doing their very best to help, with people coming through the very worst of it. There is somebody there. There's a great organisation there in West Belfast. They're doing their very best to try and help where they can, support where they can. So again, thank you, lads, for supporting the charities, and that means a lot to me, and it's a pleasure to give you my time, because you guys were willing to give up some money towards that. And same for anybody, whether it's £1, £5, £10, whether it's your own city, whether you're in Limerick like the lads here, or Clare, whatever else, whether you're in Dublin, you're America, England, wherever, take 2 minutes, look for a charity, and for the sake of a pint, you can maybe change somebody's life.
100%. No problem at all. Like literally, when I saw the mental health one, I went perfect. We've been talking about mental health with Andreas.
It affects us all. It affects us all.
Yeah, exactly. Especially, we're talking about it in the future with on the podcast about mental health and wrestling and everything like that. But once I saw the mental health charity, I was like, yep, that's going to a good cause that we need to really up in this world.
Our generation needs to do better. That is the truth. The generation before us were crap at it. and it's up to us to do even better. And hopefully the generation after us is even better than us. So it's something that I've had to educate myself on, and I didn't understand very well. And it's something over the last 10, 15 years I've definitely really tried to make a conscientious effort with, and including my own mental health as well. You know what I mean? It's, on top of that, and it's something that hopefully, that we can get a little bit better at, realize that it isn't weakness, it's actually strength to actually want to work on yourself. You know what I mean? People go to the gym and they work on themselves, and that's seen as a strength. But when people want to work on their mental health, that's seen as a weakness. That's a load of bollocks to me. That's an absolute load of bollocks. And that's something that we need to change as an overall mentality, especially in our country.
100%. 100%.
Absolutely.
Mr. Carmel, I'll let you end this off. We've an amazing outro that I love making them do for every person we get on.
Damo, thanks again for so much for coming on. It's an absolute pleasure just being able to sit down and have a chat with you. But again, for another week, we have been the 5Marks Pro Wrestling Podcast. And for this week, we are officially ding, done.
Yes.